and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, I would like to talk about Dreamcatchers because focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of both the lyrics and the music video. Because it's a song that describes the intense feelings of a person whose love gradually turns into obsession. Now, as Jiu explained on Weekly Idol, the title of the song has a double meaning that conveys the dual nature of this dangerous love. If on one hand the lyrics explain their destructive behavior by saying that it's because they love the other person, on the other the title highlights the syllable B to compare it to the Chinese character B. This is a word that means sadness, so even if the song tells us that their behavior is caused by love, the title reveals that their obsession is caused by sorrow instead. Now, even if in my comeback video I theorized that Because might have been connected to the Nightmare series, now it's pretty clear that Summer Holiday can be considered as a standalone story that explores Dreamcatcher's descent into obsession. In the video, this concept is portrayed with two versions of the girls overlapping with one another in a carnival location where their dark side slowly takes over the other, but as we'll see in a second, these two sides are not that different because they are essentially one the reflection of the other. Now, as many people have noticed, the story that Dreamcatcher are telling us here is inspired by the movie Us, which is a film by Jordan Peele where a family is hunted down by a group of doppelgangers that wants to replace them. In the video, we see many visual callbacks to this movie, and in the story, these doppelgangers are described as entities that share the same soul of the originals and act as their own shadow, which is essentially their dark side. Much like in the video, for instance, the doppelgangers live underground and the protagonist first meets her double in a funhouse full of mirrors. In contrast to the film, however, where the origins of these creatures have a more practical explanation, Dreamcatcher used this concept to convey a psychological type of horror that explores the idea that our worst enemy is none other than ourselves. You see, in order to understand the concept of the video, one thing that is important to point out is that the song is essentially about deceit. It's not so much about them being replaced by a different person, but rather about their dark side revealing itself as their true selves as a result of their growing obsession, and this idea is conveyed since the very beginning. Like Jiu admits in the opening, for instance, the girls are disguising themselves. Since people don't know them well, at first glance they might think that they're good, but in reality nobody knows who they really are. This is a skill that in the story they use to their advantage, because when the person that they love comes into their life, the girls use their deceitful nature in order to lure them in with a lie. In order to seduce their loved one, Dreamcatcher create a persona that is so well crafted that it's very difficult to tell it apart from their real selves, and this ambiguity is expressed in the video as well. At the beginning, for instance, the video shows us a version of Gaion freeing herself from her cage. In the choreography, we see that in the opening she plays the role of Jiu's reflection who reaches out from the other side in order to strangle her, so at first glance it seems that the one in the cage is her dark side that is coming to the surface as a result of this toxic love. If we compare the opening scene to the ending, however, we discover that this is just one side of the story, because by the end we also see Jiu caressing Gaion's face and sitting next to her like a puppeteer next to her doll. These visuals here imply that the Gaion that sets herself free is actually the version of herself that she wants to portray in order to make the other person fall in love. Like a doll is beautiful and perfect in every way, Dreamcatcher disguise themselves as ideal girls their lover can play with as they like, and even if at first their serenade works and the other person falls for them, it's pretty clear that it's their lover the one who is being played. As we see in the video, all the girls are associated to duality and deception. If Gaion chokes Jiu in the dance, Jiu controls Gaion at the end. Suwa is hiding behind the mask, Shion has a double that is ready to come through, both Dami and Handong are playing with toys and are associated to entities that hide their identity, and Huyeon is at the center of a circus that changes color as time goes by. Now in the video, we see that Huyeon's carnival changes from red to blue, and these are the same colors that represent the two versions of the girls that reflect each other in the choreography. Now in the movie Us, red was a color that was associated to the doppelgangers, while the blue was connected more to the originals. In this context, however, I think that a more fitting interpretation would be that the blue is the mask that they are wearing, while the red the shadow that hides behind it, so these visuals might imply that the girls are able to change back and forth without any difficulty. They can play the role of perfect dolls, but deep down they are the ones playing with them. They are wearing a mask, but they can just as easily remove it, and these two worlds are so intertwined with one another that it's almost impossible to tell them apart. The fact that the colors change, however, might also be an indication that their deception is temporary, and this idea is also reinforced by the hourglass that we see in the video. At the beginning, for instance, Jiu flips the hourglass to signal the beginning of the deception that is about to take place, but by the end, this game that they're playing eventually comes to an end, and even if the girls are smiling, the outcome of their journey is much sadder than what it seems. As the song tells us, despite them trying their best to be with their lover forever, despite them enduring all the pain that they inflicted upon themselves in order to become that doll, and despite them giving the other person a lot of chances, their lover ends up rejecting them by saying that their behavior is creepy. In the song, the girls agree with this statement, but them agreeing with it doesn't make their rejection any less painful. You see, much like what the title foreshadows, because it's a song with a strong double meaning. If on the one hand the girls play the role of people who obsessively deceive their lover in order to seduce them, on the other, their actions come from a desperate need to be loved that pushes them into a toxic cycle that they both enforce and are a victim of. As the lyrics say, after the other person rejects them, the girls show themselves for who they really are. They tell them how it is and beg the other person to stay by their side because they don't want to be, meaning that in this context they need this love because they don't want to be sad anymore. By the time their true self starts coming through, however, the damage is already done, so to an extent the girls themselves end up being victims of their own actions. As we see in the video, for instance, both Jiu and Gaion trying to run away from this circus. They try to escape their own reflection, but end up failing anyway, and this is because they can never escape themselves. As we see throughout the story, the only ones to blame for their sadness are the girls themselves. They lie, they play games, they pretend to be somebody that they are not, and the reason why they do that is not because of love, but because the temptation is just too strong. As we see in Sua's scene, for instance, her dark side comes through the reflection and gives her the apple, and even if at first Sua is hesitant, by the end she ends up biting the apple because she cannot resist her true nature. As the lyrics tell us at the end, the girls don't really want a love that lasts forever. They want to be loved to defeat their sadness, but at the same time, this is all a game where they're both the masterminds and the puppets, so by the end, the girls fall back into this toxic cycle because their dark side is much stronger than the other. The doppelgangers that represent their own shadow eventually win this inner battle because the enemy that the girls had to defeat was themselves all along. So that's it from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.